We better hurry if we're going to grab the streetcar. There's not much to do while you're on the streetcar. Maybe socialize with your neighbor. Oh, I know. Grab the Walla Walla Gazette and start reading that. Today's issue is May 11th, 1895. Mortgaged farms and the rate of their foreclosure. The records of Walla Walla County show that 36 mortgage foreclosures are in process at the present time. If this is continued to June 1st, 1896, it is estimated that 2/3 of the area of Walla Walla County will have changed ownership by the operation of mortgages. When it was learned that the Gazette reporter had collected data for this article, several persons called upon him to remonstrate against their publication. These dissenters urged that it would impair our credit at home and abroad to publish to the world the mortgage conditions of our farms. That would deter immigrants from stopping with us. The people depend upon the newspapers to mirror the social and financial conditions of the locality. When publishers fail to do that, whether by intimidation or by lack of enterprise, they violate their obligation to the subscribers and to the public. While it may be shown in some instances that ignorance is bliss, it can never be shown that it is profitable. While considering this picture of financial disturbance, it must be borne in mind that not all of Walla Walla is so involved. The records show few mortgages along the foothills of the mountains and in the Walla Walla Valley proper, that large area lying between Mill Creek and the Blue Mountains. Here a diversity of products has been the rule for some time, and the industries are being extended. An old landmark, the strange story of a poplar switch from Walla Walla. In Lewiston, there is an historical tree. It came from Walla Walla in 1864, just as everything else did at that time. It is related that Robert Grosstein, a merchant from Lewiston, rode a lazy mule from Walla Walla to Lewiston in 1864. To this trip, and to the fact that the mule needed strong argument to induce him to leave the Walla Walla Valley, is credited this particular tree and all the other poplar groves in the vicinity of Lewiston. For from this tree were cut the slips for all the poplars along the Upper Snake and in the Clearwater region. The slip was taken from a tree on Main Street in Walla Walla, as Grosstein was leaving town on the old Mullen Road. Bruised and peeled by the time it reached Lewiston, it was stuck into the ground near the edge of the sidewalk. It grew and flourished and was the first tree on the barren sand bank upon which Lewiston is built. The tree still flourishes where it was planted in the principal street of the city. It is 75 feet high and 8.5 feet in circumference. Twigs were severed from this parent poplar as the years went by, till now every street in the city is shaded by a line of them on each side. The lanes in the country are lined with them. Farmers have ornamental trees, groves, and windbreaks, all in a direct line of ancestry from the club Robert Grostein used to encourage his mule when he went to Lewiston. An old-timer's reminiscence. The sketches of Lincoln, which are now being published in the Gazette, prompt the memory of old-timers to a recollection of Lincoln as he was to the people in the new Northwest. Colonel George Hunter, in his reminiscences, tells us how the news of Lincoln's assassination was received at his camp at Washoe Springs on the Snake River. With about 50 other packers and stockmen, Hunter had camped for the night. He writes, "Just after we had turned out our stock and while we were arranging cargo and Arapahoes, an expressman rode up. As I was acquainted with him, he said, 'Here, Hunter, is something that will interest you,' handing me a newspaper that was dressed in mourning. At a glance, I saw that it contained an account of the assassination of President Lincoln, and at an exclamation from me, all gathered round the cargo on which I had seated myself and requested me to read aloud so that all could hear, as none of them had heard of this. I proceeded to read the account as published, and when I had finished, a man who owned an ox team threw his hat in the air and shouted, 'Hurrah for the man that killed him! I'd like a steak out of the old blank of a blank for my supper, or of any man that sympathizes with him.' For a minute all was painfully still. I supposed some man would take up this challenge, but all seemed too stunned to do so. At last I sprung from the cargo and to my saddle, where my pistol was in my holster, jerked it out, and cocking it, told him I would give him just half a minute to take that back and apologize to the gentlemen present. A hasty glance told him that if he hadn't become tired of living, he had better crawfish and apologize, which he did in good shape, and then walked off to his wagon. Then I found that nearly all were ready to lynch him. This will give the reader some idea of how the news of President Lincoln's assassination was received in many places in Oregon and Washington. Sketches of Lincoln. One man, who was a clerk in the principal store of the village where the Lincoln family purchased their supplies, remembers him as a small boy who came sometimes to the store with his mother. He would take his seat on a keg of nails, and I would give him a lump of sugar. He would sit there and eat it like any other boy. But these little acts of kindness, observes the man in an enthusiastic statement made in 1865, so impressed his mind that I made a steadfast friend in a man whose power and influence have since been felt throughout the world. Schoolmate of Lincoln said, "Abe was a mere spindle of a boy, and his due proportion of harmless mischief, and we lived in a country abounding in hazel switches, and Abe, of course, received his due allowance of the switch." Dr. Hall's lecture. On Monday evening, the Christian church was packed with an intelligent audience to listen to a lecture by Dr. Hall of Decatur, Illinois, on happy homes and how to have them. From an intellectual standpoint, the speaker's remarks would rank as mediocre only, and the lecture as a whole could not be classified as a literary gem. However, Dr. Hall was eloquent and very witty. What he said fell upon attentive ears. His mirth-provoking anecdotes had the desired effect, and the audience was kept in a ripple of merriment for nearly 2 hours. "My ideal happy home," said the speaker, "has in it a model man and a model woman. The model man must be physically strong, every organ of his body performing its function. He does not drink, smoke, nor play cards." As examples of a model woman, he instanced some of the illustrious women whose names gleam from the pages of biblical history, such as Martha, Mary, Dorcas, and Lydia. The model woman was a Martha in the kitchen, a Mary in the parlor, and a Dorcas among the poor, and a Lydia in business. In the ideal home, plenty of sunshine is admitted, cheerful looks predominate, kindly words reign supreme, family prayer is not forgotten, and over and above all God's eternal love permeates the hearts of the model man and woman in it. A.C. Cummins, the foreman of the Gazette office, is the first deaf-mute publisher of the territory and state of Washington. He was the first deaf-mute to learn the publishing business in California. He is a fine newspaper and job printer. The Kickapoo Indian Remedy Company have been doing the town during the last week and giving shows every night, which has afforded amusement for the people. Pomeroy, East Washingtonian. A.B. Niles, the tombstone man of Walla Walla this week, placed a handsome monument at the grave of Casper Plummer in Union Chapel Cemetery. Sports and athletics. The run of salmon has just reached the Dalles. It is later than usual. Our streams will afford but little sport in this line this year. It is conceded that Alva Merrill has caught the largest trout of the season. It measured 2 feet and was taken from one of the upper forks of the Walla Walla River. Demont Church and Frank Sharpstein brought home good baskets of large brook trout from the Little Walla Walla about the first of the week. They used 2 Coachman fly hooks baited with periwinkle for each leader and say that they frequently took in 2 fish at a time. They declare that the trout of the Little Walla Walla are plump and healthy. Willie Gage makes a business of fishing. Last week he averaged 2 big baskets full a day. He puts the big trout in one basket and he takes them in, and the smaller ones in another. He generally sells each basket for $1, whereby he makes $2 a day.